It's not every day that the biggest name in hip-hop finds himself trapped in the kind of scandal that could rewrite the rules of the entire music industry. But this isn't just another Drake controversy. This time, it's personal and it's dangerous. Because what started as a quiet legal dispute has snowballed into one of the most revealing stories about power, influence, and manipulation in modern music. Drake, the man who once controlled the charts like a puppet master, is now fighting to protect his empire. But behind the scenes, this lawsuit has done something no diss track ever could. It's cracked open the system that's been protecting him for over a decade. The system of silent partnerships, streaming manipulation, and corporate favors that made Drake untouchable until now. The whispers started small. Industry insiders hinting that this wasn't just about money or contracts. It was about truth. About a story that was never meant to see the light of day. And the deeper people looked, the more they started to realize. This new lawsuit could expose how far the music industry will go to keep its golden boy on top. This isn't about Drake versus one person. It's about Drake versus the truth. Before we go further, support me by liking this video and subscribing to this channel. It helps a lot. To understand why this lawsuit feels like the end of an era, you have to understand the system Drake helped build and how it might be turning against him. For years, Drake wasn't just a star. He was the algorithm. Every playlist, every chart, every headline was perfectly synchronized to maintain one image: dominance. Even when his music dipped in quality, the machine kept running. Streams appeared inflated. Chart placements never wavered. Collaborations always came right on cue, as if someone was pressing a reset button every time the public got bored. But now, that machine is under investigation. Reports have surfaced that certain streaming numbers tied to Drake's releases were artificially boosted by networks of third-party promotion companies. The same ones now caught in legal trouble for data manipulation and fraudulent reporting. The lawsuit ties into that, questioning whether Drake's label knowingly benefited from inflated metrics. Suddenly, the world's biggest artist is being painted as a participant in one of the largest image control operations in music history. And the people who used to protect him, they've gone silent. Because when the system you helped build starts to collapse, it's not just your reputation that's at stake. It's the entire illusion that made you powerful. So, what exactly triggered this chain reaction? It all began with a former data contractor, a name that might not mean much now, but one that could soon reshape how artists are ranked, paid, and remembered. This contractor reportedly worked on back-end systems used by major streaming platforms and labels to track audience engagement. And according to leaked documents, the lawsuit alleges that specific high-priority accounts were granted visibility amplification, a euphemism for artificially pushing certain artists to the top of playlists, search results, and algorithmic recommendations. At first, it sounded like another conspiracy, until internal emails started surfacing. Emails that suggested certain boosted artists had a direct connection to OVO's promotional ecosystem, the kind of thing that should have stayed hidden forever. Drake's team has, of course, denied all wrongdoing, calling the claims baseless and motivated by envy. But inside the industry, people aren't so sure. The sudden quiet from streaming executives, the redacted contracts, and the delayed public responses, all of it points to a bigger storm brewing. And now, for the first time, the man who always seemed untouchable might be forced to face questions no PR spin can erase. Because this lawsuit doesn't just challenge Drake's numbers, it challenges his legacy. Once people began digging into the lawsuit, the pieces started fitting together in a way that was almost too perfect, too controlled. Drake's rise had always been portrayed as a product of hard work and perfect timing. But the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes that timing might not have been the only factor. Sources within streaming companies have long whispered about placement priorities, artists whose music gets pushed regardless of user interest. And Drake? He wasn't just on the list, he was the list. There were algorithms fine-tuned around his sound, his tempo, even his release calendar. Entire departments within major labels existed to analyze when a Drake drop could maximize platform engagement. That's not illegal, but it becomes a different story when money changes hands behind the scenes. Documents from the ongoing lawsuit hint at partnerships between OVO-affiliated companies and data-boosting agencies overseas. These agencies specialize in organic growth simulation, a fancy phrase for paid stream farms disguised as real listeners. What's wild is that this manipulation wasn't even subtle. Every time Drake released a new single, no matter how mid, it mysteriously topped global charts within hours. Songs with weak replay value somehow broke records. And when fans questioned the numbers, they were drowned out by corporate silence. Now, those same platforms are trying to quietly scrub their records. But you can't erase digital fingerprints. And this lawsuit might be the first time the curtain gets pulled all the way back on how the modern music machine really works. Here's where it gets darker. Because this isn't just about Drake. It's about the industry that made him the face of controlled success. When you think about hip-hop's biggest names, they're often tied to cultural movements, not corporate manipulation. Kendrick Lamar, for example, built his reputation on authenticity and raw truth. Drake, on the other hand, built his on precision, an artist engineered for mass consumption. The lawsuit has sparked uncomfortable conversations inside the boardrooms of major labels. Executives who once celebrated Drake's dominance are now scrambling to distance themselves. Because if this case proves even a fraction of what's alleged, it won't just expose one artist. It'll expose an entire network of pay-to-play schemes that fueled the streaming era. And make no mistake, these aren't small-time operations. We're talking about private marketing firms contracted by major labels, funneling millions into artificial amplification while claiming it's data-driven strategy. They used to call it promotion. Now it's just digital fraud with better branding. The industry's hidden hand was always there, controlling narratives, inflating success, burying challengers. But with this lawsuit, the illusion of meritocracy in music might finally collapse. And once that happens, the question becomes, who was actually earning those streams, and who was just buying their own legend? It didn't take long for the internet to catch on. Once word about the lawsuit spread, fans, critics, and even artists started calling out what they'd suspected for years. Drake's dominance was too clean to be real. Memes exploded. Tweets went viral. Suddenly, people were revisiting old interviews, moments where Drake bragged about his chart runs or dismissed accusations of ghostwriting and favoritism. Everything that once seemed like confidence now read as deflection. Even worse, other artists began to speak up in coded ways. Rappers who'd been quietly blackballed for calling out industry politics felt vindicated. You could feel the shift. The public's trust in the system that crowned Drake as king was fading. And when Kendrick's Not Like Us exploded across the culture earlier this year, it wasn't just a diss track anymore. It became an anthem, a rebellion against the corporate machine. Fans weren't just rooting for Kendrick to win a beef. They were celebrating the destruction of a system that had manipulated them for years. That's the irony. Drake's entire career was built on controlling the narrative. But now, the narrative is controlling him. Every headline, every TikTok edit, every tweet about fake streams chips away at the myth he spent 15 years building. For the first time, the audience doesn't believe in Drake's magic. They're seeing the strings, and they're disgusted. The most damning evidence in all of this isn't emotional, it's mathematical. Analysts have compared Drake's streaming data to other top artists, and the patterns don't add up. Songs with low social engagement and minimal playlist traction still manage to achieve massive day-one numbers. Meanwhile, competitors with viral hits sometimes perform lower, despite having higher organic engagement. The lawsuit's forensic audit reportedly uncovered a digital paper trail, suspicious IP clusters, repeated stream behaviors, and promotional accounts that trace back to firms with indirect OVO ties. While none of this proves Drake's personal involvement, it paints a clear picture. His empire was protected by numbers that weren't entirely real. And here's the twist. Even if Drake didn't personally orchestrate it, he benefited from it. The sponsorships, the awards, the tours, the brand deals, all built on inflated metrics that told the world he was untouchable. Now, those numbers are turning against him. Because when the illusion breaks, the first thing people question isn't your chart position, it's your credibility. No matter how Drake spins this, one name keeps looming over the conversation: Kendrick Lamar. It's poetic, really. For years, Kendrick was labeled too lyrical, too deep, or too serious to compete with Drake's mainstream chokehold. But now, as the lawsuit drags Drake's reputation through the mud, Kendrick stands untouched, a symbol of authenticity in an era built on algorithms. When Kendrick dropped Not Like Us, he wasn't just dissing Drake, he was exposing a system. Every lyric hit harder in hindsight. They Not Like Us wasn't just about artists, it was about truth versus fabrication. Now, the lawsuit is proving Kendrick's point in real time. Drake may have ruled the charts, but Kendrick ruled the culture. And when the dust settles, history won't remember who streamed more. It'll remember who stood for something real. Even inside the industry, people are quietly admitting it. Kendrick's influence outlasted Drake's dominance. The lawsuits, the manipulation, the controversy, all of it just proves that no amount of fake numbers can compete with genuine respect. When the lawsuit news spread beyond the blogs and hit mainstream outlets, the reaction from the culture was swift and brutal. This wasn't just about one man's numbers anymore. It was about trust. Hip-hop fans pride themselves on authenticity, on artists earning their stripes through bars, struggle, and honesty. Drake's entire empire, it seemed, had been built on smoke and sponsorships. Podcasters debated whether his legacy could ever recover. TikTok producers made mashups of Not Like Us with screenshots of the court filings. Even people who weren't hardcore rap fans started asking, was the whole streaming era fake? And the timing couldn't be worse. While Drake's name was tangled in legal headlines, Kendrick was still touring sold-out arenas, letting his art speak for itself. The contrast was devastating. One artist was expanding the genre. The other was fighting to prove he hadn't cheated the game. Every era has its cultural reckoning. For hip-hop, this might be it. The moment the audience finally stopped believing in manufactured legends. And the more people looked, the more they realized Drake's case wasn't an isolated scandal. It was a mirror reflecting the music industry's own corruption. Behind the polished smiles and PR statements, the cracks started showing inside Drake's camp. Longtime collaborators went quiet. Affiliates who used to flood timelines with praise began posting cryptic quotes about truth always coming to light. Insiders leaked that certain members of OVO were unhappy with how management handled the fallout. Some feared subpoenas. Others worried about their own brands getting dragged down. And then there were the whispers about financial tension, endorsement deals pausing, sponsors reevaluating relationships. Drake has always prided himself on loyalty, the family energy of OVO. But loyalty gets tested when lawyers start calling. The same empire that once looked bulletproof was now a web of NDAs and nervous silence. And it's not just business pressure. Mentally, the weight shows. For an artist who once seemed untouchable, every post, every appearance, every lyric is dissected. Every word is seen as a defense. You can sense it, the paranoia creeping in. Because when your circle starts to crumble, you begin to realize how fragile power really is. While Drake was publicly defending his name, something even more sinister was happening in the background, the quiet maneuvering of the labels. The truth is, major labels don't care who they sacrifice as long as the machine keeps running. Drake's dominance served a purpose. He kept streaming platforms profitable and radio stations predictable. But once controversy hit, the same executives who praised him started searching for the next era, the next artist to carry the illusion. Rumor has it that internal meetings at Universal and Republic grew tense. Some executives wanted to cut ties and protect corporate interests. Others wanted to fight for Drake's innocence. But the common thread was fear. Fear that if the lawsuit exposed too much, investors and advertisers might start asking hard questions about how organic their successes really were. For years, artists have accused the industry of choosing who wins long before the public ever hears a song. This lawsuit threatens to prove them right. And if it does, it won't just end Drake's reign. It'll mark the beginning of the end for the label-controlled era itself. Even before the real court reaches a verdict, the court of public opinion already has. Online, Drake's credibility is collapsing in real time. Comment sections are flooded with skepticism. Every new release is met with sarcasm. Analysts are comparing his engagement stats to smaller artists and finding alarming gaps. Huge day-one numbers that vanish within a week. It's the digital version of a rigged election. And while Drake's fans still defend him, their voices are drowned out by the larger cultural wave demanding accountability. Hip-hop has always been about calling out the fake, from ghostwriters to false street cred. This is just the newest version of that age-old battle between image and authenticity. The irony is painful. Drake once controlled perception better than anyone alive. Now, perception is his biggest enemy. Because once the audience stops believing, no lawsuit, no PR spin, no #1 record can save you. The internet never forgets, and the culture never forgives. The fallout hit faster than anyone expected. Within weeks of the lawsuit's details going public, brands began quietly removing Drake's image from promotional material. Partnerships that once bragged about their long-term collaboration suddenly disappeared from his bio. Some tour sponsors reportedly delayed payments, pending clarification on the ongoing investigation. The business world hates uncertainty, and Drake had become the definition of it. Then came the artists. You could feel the shift in tone, subtle jabs from peers who once treated him like royalty. Club DJs began slipping "Not Like Us" in his sets again. Up-and-coming rappers started using Drake's name as a metaphor for everything wrong with the industry. Even in Toronto, the atmosphere changed. For the first time, fans questioned whether Drake's hometown pride had been built on authenticity or control. He used to be the city's symbol of success. Now, he's the case study for what happens when power goes unchecked. The lawsuit hasn't even reached its verdict, but culturally, the damage is already done. Drake's image, the clean, curated brand that survived every scandal, every diss, has finally met something it can't outrun: the truth. And this is where the conversation shifts from gossip to history. Because when all the noise fades, one question will remain: what is Drake's legacy really worth? Is he the most successful rapper of all time, or the most manufactured? The lawsuit forces everyone to confront that uncomfortable line between talent and technology, between art and algorithm. Yes, Drake's pen created classics. Yes, his voice defined an era. But how much of that era was real? How much of it was built by data analysts, streaming deals, and quiet label favors that made sure his name never left the top of the charts? Kendrick Lamar didn't just beat Drake in a lyrical war. He exposed the deeper problem. Authenticity still matters. And when you strip away the machinery, the only thing left is the music. The lawsuit isn't just a legal battle, it's a cultural audit. And when it's over, hip-hop might finally have to decide what kind of success it wants to celebrate: the real or the rigged. Every empire eventually meets its reckoning. For Drake, this was never supposed to happen. Not after surviving beefs, scandals, leaks, and years of being the industry's untouchable face. But this time, it isn't about who he dissed or who he dated. It's about how deep the system goes and how much of his success was built on manipulation. And that's the terrifying beauty of this moment. It's bigger than Drake. It's about an entire generation waking up to how the music business really works. It's about fans realizing they were sold an illusion disguised as greatness. Drake's lawsuit has become a symbol, not of guilt or innocence, but of exposure. It's a crack in the mirror that forces everyone to see the reflection clearly for the first time. Because if Drake's empire, the most polished, profitable, and protected of them all, can be questioned, then maybe the whole system was never real to begin with. The illusion is gone. The machine has been exposed, and hip-hop, for the first time in years, feels real again. I want to thank you for watching to the end. Remember to like this video and subscribe to this channel. And as always, stay active.